Kia ora everybody, and welcome back to Humankind. My name is JumboPixel, and today we're looking at these. It's the Industrial Era Cultures, and as you'll see, this era is largely Eurocentric, and largely full of gunner units, reflective of modern world history during the Industrial Era, which I really like. I'm going to take you through all 10 of these cultures, from the Brits right the way through to the Zulu, and we're going to talk about the emblematic quarters, units, traits, and more. First up, it's the Austro-Hungarians, and they are an aesthete culture, largely focused around influence and stability. Their trait, Emperor's Hand, provides a flat +2 influence on districts, and their other special little bonus is that it takes 1.5 times as long, or there's a 50% multiplier added, to the time it takes for your cities and outposts to be converted by other cultures. You can see it's very much a turtle and hold culture, a culture largely focused on gaining stability and influence. So if you're coming out of a particularly messy and turbulent early and mid-game after some warring, just like the Austro-Hungarians in real life perhaps, then you'll feel right at home with their emblematic quarter, the Open House. Their emblematic unit, the Evidence Bureau Agents, are a fairly standard unit for this era, as you'll see throughout. They're a melee gunner unit with roughly 6 movement points, roughly 4 range, and roughly within cooey of what all the rest of these units cost. As a sly gunner unit, they also ignore hostile zones of control. Overall, a solid culture for those needing stability. Next up, we have the Brits. These guys are focused around colonialism and money. They are, of course, an expansionist culture. Their trait provides +5% money on all of your territories on the capital, and +5% science per number of territories on the capital. So the game plan here is to have a capital territory, link some others to it, and then gain all of that additional money and science based off all of those territories being linked to your capital. The emblematic quarter, the colonial office, provides +10 money. +10 money from lieges. That's people you've beaten and then vassalized. These are empires and other players who have become your vassals. You'll also receive per adjacent district +2 money and +2 money per liege. So there's a strong emphasis on having lieges here. So you want to take the Brits if you've taken over people. Again, their emblematic unit, the Redcoat, is another gunner unit. However, this one regenerates health outside of your territory. Next up, we have the French, a scientific, enlightened culture. They receive a flat +20% science bonus. That's it. Simple, pure, +20% science. This is very strong, and I would remind you, it stacks with previous culture traits. So if you're picking up your scientific cultures throughout your game plan, you're going to have a really strong scientific bonus. It combos nicely with the exhibition hall, which will give you +1 science per population, with the standards 10 stability penalty, also +1 turn before being converted by other influence per district on your territory. So you're a little bit stronger to being converted to other cultures, but it does depend on the number of districts. You'll also receive +3 influence on them. The French are slightly different in that they have a heavy cavalry unit, and its heavy charge is really powerful. This is the most powerful unit that you'll get at this era. It receives +9 combat strength when charging. Very good indeed. Next up, we have the Germans. Their trait is +3 combat strength on heavy weapon units. You'll want to have some heavy weapon units saved up from previous eras, however, because their emblematic unit is the U-boat. This is a torpedo vessel which has strong ranged attacks within the ocean, of course. It's also stealthy, so it can't be seen by other units that are adjacent to it. This is very strong, but not particularly cohesive with land combat, which is probably the main way you're going to be fighting. So you're going to want to make sure that you have some standard heavy weapon units to make the most of the Germans' benefits. The emblematic quarter, the works, provides +1 industry per adjacent population, +3 industry per adjacent maker's quarter, so really strong bonuses there, +1 worker's slot, and -10 stability. It's your standard industrial powerhouse emblematic quarter. A good culture, but not particularly synergetic. Next up, we have the Italians. They get +10% stability on commons quarters, and the cost of common quarters are reduced by 50%. These are the quarters which provide stability. They also have an emblematic quarter which provides stability rather than taking it away. A +5 bonus, so around half of what it could be, but combos really nicely with their inspiring virtuosus trait. They also get +1 influence per traders, per researchers, and a flat +1 influence from the emblematic quarter, the titro. Their emblematic unit, like many others, is another gunner. However, theirs is slightly different in that it's a cliff crosser, so you can cross those difficult cliffs in the game, making you a little bit more agile. Otherwise, it's the same strength and movement and range of all others. I think that the Italians are a really interesting one in that they're really focused on stability, but also you get some nice influence bonuses throughout. Next up, we have the Mexicans. They are really focused on agrarianship and growth. They get plus 20% food on all cities as their flat bonus. Really quite nice, actually. Fields of gold. Their emblematic quarter, the Hacienda, also provides food, so really heavily going into their cultural affinity here. Plus 3 food per adjacent farmers' quarters, so slap this in the middle, pop them round the outside, round the outside, round the outside. Plus 1 food on districts as well that provide food, the standard stability penalty, and plus 1 farmers slot. Nice to have. Their unit, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but like no other, it's like many others, rather, it's a gunner unit. However, again, with a slight difference. These are guerrilla fighters. They maintain stealth even when attacking. So, very sneaky. Very, very sneaky. And I think that that's a great strength that differentiates them from a lot of other gunner units in this within this industrial era. Next up, we have someone slightly different than most, less Eurocentric. It's the Persians. The Persians gain basically a reduced multiplier on shared projects, wonders. This is really powerful, by the way. 25% reduced industry cost on wonders. That's freaking powerful, particularly if you're playing strong on them, which you should be doing, because wonders in Humankind are very, very powerful indeed. Their emblematic quarter, the Caravanserai, provides plus 5 money, plus 3 industry, the standard stability penalties, and an additional trader's slot. The district does not need to be built adjacent to another district, so you can plop it out in the middle of nowhere, and it applies swift to any friendly army located on the district. So your unique gunner units, which are also stronger when attacking, by the way, they're piercing units, so they receive a plus 5 combat strength, can synergize with that really nicely. I quite like the Persians. I'd recommend you check them out. Next up, we have Mother Russia, the great Russians themselves, featuring not only for the first and not the last time in Humankind. However, the industrial era Russians are quite interesting indeed. You get plus 10% experience on units created per the number of territories on all cities. So you build on that expansionism, you get a little bit of extra experience for your units. Their unique unit is very powerful and different from most within the era. It's the Cossacks, which we would love, we would have grown and love and would really expect from them, right? This is a gunner ranged unit, however, as it's a mounted unit, it can move and fire, so you can perform a full move after attacking. Really powerful to have that mobility. They overall have a fairly standard 6 movement, 4 range, and 44 combat strength, and of course you will need horses and gunpowder to get them, so slightly more required to get them, but man, their mobility is powerful. The emblematic quarter is different from most as well. It provides faith per adjacent district, plus 5. You also receive plus 10 health regeneration on units, and a minus 10 stability. This one's really unique. We don't often see faith-based emblematic quarters, so something to look out for. And I think overall, while it doesn't necessarily imply a great deal of synergy, you can see that you get extra faith, you heal your units, you move and shoot. A powerful culture, not necessarily synergetic, but very interesting. I'd recommend you check them out. Next up, we have the Siamese, who, as Gilded Orchids, receive plus 3 industry per traders on all cities. This is interesting because it combines 2 yields into 1 with an emblematic trait, which we don't often see. Combos well with their emblematic quarter. The floating market provides plus 1 money per population, plus 3 money per adjacent maker's quarter, and plus 5 industry. And their gunner unit, man, if you thought the Cossacks were strong, you ain't seen nothing yet, hun. This Gatling elephant is a ranged elephant with a gun. It's also a suppressive unit, so the targeted unit can't both move and attack next turn. They have to choose one. Super strong, super suppressive, really powerful unit, and the rest of their culture doesn't force you into just focusing on it either. So you have flexibility with the Siamese. I like that a great deal. Last but not least, we have the Zulu, who receive as a militaristic culture, and man, they are militaristic out of everybody in this era. They receive plus 50% health regeneration on their units. That's Warrior's Pride, their trait. Their emblematic unit is, of course, the Impy. It's a melee close-range unit, not carrying a gun like almost every other in this era, unless you're a U-boat, and it is unstoppable. That's its emblematic trait, which provides it with plus 4 combat strength when attacking stronger units, which you will be doing, because naturally you've got a shield and a spear. You're not going to be the strongest unit in this era. That bonus will lift you up and actually make you the strongest unit in many cases. Their emblematic quarter also synergizes really well. You get some extra stability, plus 5. You get plus 4 combat strength for units in or adjacent to it, so somewhat defensive, but if you can plop it on the border, you can use it aggressively too. It's also a spawn point, and it's fortified, so it acts like a fortification district. You can spawn your units on them and get nice and close to the enemy. Thank you very much for watching this reflection on Humankind's Industrial Era Cultures. Overall, we can see a really strong emphasis on guns and on European powers, which we would expect. That's fairly true to life. I think there are some interesting differential cultures here, though. In particular, I really like the Russians, the Persians, and the Siamese. I think all three of them are quite different, quite unique, but you can't go wrong with the classic Eurocentric run and gun theming here from the Brits. The French as well, really powerful science. And if you happen to need naval strength for whatever reason, then you probably shouldn't look past the Germans. However, I don't think that's going to be particularly common, but I could be wrong, and actually I'd quite like to be proven wrong. It's just in general in 4X games, we don't see a lot of love for naval units and naval combat as a whole. That concludes this video, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one for more Humankind.